Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are absolutely peeling back the curtain on web application security, and we're doing it by looking at one of the most massive historical events in the space. We're talking about an attack technique that literally hides in plain sight, cross-site scripting.
Okay, let's dive into this. 1 million. That is the staggering number of user profiles that were infected practically overnight on October 4th, 2005. The target? MySpace.com. Remember, at the time, it was the most popular social networking site in the world. We're talking a top 10 trafficked website in the US with over 32 million users. And boom, overnight, 1 million of those profiles were compromised. It was so bad, MySpace literally had to pull the plug on its servers just to stop the bleeding.
So you really have to ask yourself, how did one single teenager achieve this kind of massive scale overnight? Like, there's no way it was a highly sophisticated crime syndicate, right? It wasn't. It wasn't some complex zero-day exploit either. It was just a 19-year-old taking advantage of a seemingly simple, incredibly common vulnerability that sparked this entire chain reaction.
Section 1. The MySpace Sammy Worm.
The reality of this attack was, honestly, kind of bizarre. The worm infected the site with JavaScript viral code, sure, but the visible payload? It just made the hacker, a guy named Sammy, everyone's friend. It literally just wrote, "Sammy is my hero" on their profiles. Now, in the grand scheme of cybercrime, that payload was relatively benign. Sammy really just wanted to be famous. But think about the terrifying potential here. Almost instantly, this attacker had control over 1 million web browsers. He had access to gigabits of bandwidth. What if those users were logged into their online bank accounts, or their Google accounts, or their stock brokerages at the exact same time? The magnitude of the risk was unprecedented, and it was all executed through one specific type of malware.
Section 2. What is cross-site scripting?
Let's break this down. Cross-site scripting, or XSS for short. In simple terms, it's an attack technique that forces a trusted website to echo attacker-supplied executable code. And then it loads that code right into a user's web browser. It's a bit of a mind bender, because the server isn't actually the one being hacked here. The server is merely the vehicle. The attack executes entirely within your web browser.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ventriloquist analogy. Think of the attacker as a ventriloquist. They're using a vulnerable, highly trusted website, say your favorite blog or a forum, as their dummy. So when you visit that site, the dummy speaks, but it's actually the attacker's voice, the attacker's code, executing directly in your browser. The server isn't the victim. You are. Your browser, your session cookies, your private data, those are the true targets here. Just consider an innocent-looking blog for a second. Pay close attention to the search box. We use these things every single day, right? Without a second thought. But if a website takes the text you type into that search field, sends it to the server, and then echoes it back to the screen, saying something like, "You search for X," well, that functionality can be an open door for an attack. Because if the website doesn't clean or sanitize what you typed, an attacker can just type in executable HTML or JavaScript code instead of a normal word.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the immediate visual consequence of doing exactly that. It is striking. When you replace the original search term with just a simple line of HTML and JavaScript, the browser doesn't know it's malicious. It just reads the code the website handed back and executes it. Bam! You get a pop-up dialog box that says XSS testing. Now sure, it seems harmless as a pop-up, but it definitively proves that JavaScript has successfully bypassed the trusted context of the website and executed perfectly on your machine.
And this builds into a massive impending threat. Get this. Research shows that this exact vulnerability, cross-site scripting, has historically been found in over 80% of all websites. 80%! That is huge. It's by far the most common vulnerability found in web applications today. And it's operating system independent. It absolutely doesn't care if you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, because the whole thing lives right there in the web browser.
Section 3. Types of XSS attacks.
There are a few main categories here, but let's look at the two most common ones: reflected versus stored XSS. Reflected, or non-persistent XSS, requires the attacker to trick you. They craft a special, malicious link, maybe disguise it using a URL shortener, and email it to you. The moment you click the link, your request goes to the server, and the malicious script is immediately reflected back and executed in your browser. Stored XSS, on the other hand, way more dangerous because it's persistent. The attacker permanently injects their payload into the target application. It's like leaving a hidden booby trap in a blog comment section. You don't even have to click a suspicious link. You just have to casually visit the infected web page, and that malicious script is served to you automatically.
Then we have a third type, DOM-based XSS. This one is an advanced, purely client-side attack. Instead of manipulating the server's response, the attacker's payload manipulates the document object model, the DOM, entirely inside the user's browser. What makes this so incredibly tricky is that the malicious payload might never even be sent to the server, so it can completely evade traditional server-side firewalls and security logs. It's practically invisible to the server.
Section 4. Why XSS is dangerous.
Let's explore exactly what happens once JavaScript sneaks into a trusted session, because the attacker can do some serious damage. First off, they can steal your session cookies. And if they get your session token, they can literally impersonate you. They can log into your webmail or your bank account without even needing your password. They can also read and modify the DOM, rewriting the web page to trick you. And because JavaScript has access to HTML5 APIs, they can track your location, access your files, or, horrifyingly, hijack your webcam and microphone. They can capture every keystroke you type or redirect you to phishing sites. It essentially turns your browser into a fully compromised zombie.
Section 5. How to prevent XSS.
So the crucial point is that XSS is an entirely preventable attack if developers follow a few strict rules. First, treat all user input as untrusted, always, no exceptions. Second, use escaping and encoding so that any input is treated strictly as text, not executable code. Third, if users absolutely must input HTML, utilize a trusted HTML sanitizer to scrub it clean. Fourth, set the HTTP-only flag for your cookies. This specifically blocks client-side JavaScript from accessing your sensitive session tokens. And finally, implement a content security policy, or CSP, which restricts exactly where dynamic resources can be loaded from.
Which brings us to a question I really want you to leave with today. How much trust do you put into the basic input fields of your favorite websites? Seriously, think about it. The next time you type a comment, use a search bar, or interact with a web form, remember the ventriloquist, remember the Sammy worm. The web is a wonderfully interactive place, but keeping it secure requires constant vigilance behind the scenes. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this sparked your curiosity about cybersecurity, and I'll catch you next time.